Alright, I'm gonna try this away. I'm back again. How you doing?
Uplands. The Hastings fled north up the valley and sent his relation Halford Scott to King Halfdan to beg for peace. On consideration of their relationship, King Halfdan gave King Hastings half of Hedmark, which he and his relations had held before, but kept to himself Bolton and the district called Land. He likewise appropriated to himself Hayland, and thus became a mighty king. 3. Halfdan's marriage. Halfdan the Black got a wife called Ragnhild, a daughter of Harald Volske, Goldbeard, who was a king and son. They had a son, to whom Harald gave his own name. And the boy was brought up in Son by his mother's father, King Harald. Now when this Harald had lived out his days nearly, and was become weak, having no son, he gave his dominion to his daughter's son Harald, and gave him his title of king. And he died soon after. The same winter his daughter Ragnhild died. And the following spring the young Harald fell sick and died at 10 years of age. As soon as Halfdan the Black heard of his son's death, he took the road northwards to Somme with a great force, and was well received. He claimed heritage and dominion after his son. And no opposition being made, he took the whole kingdom. Earl Adel and Jov, the Slender, who was a friend of King Halfdan, came to him from Golar. And the king set him over the Somme district to judge in the country according to the country's laws, and collect scat upon the king's account. Thereafter King Halfdan proceeded to his kingdom in the uplands. 4. Halfdan strife with Gandalf's sons. In autumn, King Halfdan proceeded to visit Volmar. One night when he was there in guest quarters, it happened that about midnight a man came to him who had been on the watch on horseback, and told him a war force was come near to the house. The king instantly got up, ordered his men to arm themselves, and went out of the house and drew them up in battle order. At the same moment, Gandalf's sons, Hotting and Helsing, made their appearance with a large army. There was a great battle. But Halfdan, being overpowered by the numbers of people, fled to the forest, leaving many of his men on the spot. His foster father, Overspain, the wise, fell here. The people now came in swarms to King Halfdan, and he advanced to seek Gandalf's sons. They met at Eye, near Lake Oirin, and fought there. Hotting and Helsing fell, and their brother had saved himself by flight. King Halfdan then took possession of the whole of Velmar, and he fled to Alfheimr. 5. Halfdan's marriage with Hjort's daughter. Sigurd Hjort was the name of a king in Gringeride, who was stouter and stronger than any other man, and his equal could not be seen for a handsome appearance. His father was Helge Hvasse, the Sharp, and his mother was Oslog, a daughter of Sigurd the Worm-eyed, who again was the son of Ragnarok. It is told of Sigurd that when he was only 12 years old he killed in single combat the Buster Hildebrand and 11 others of his comrades. And many are the deeds of men that told of him in a long saga about his deeds. Sigurd had 2 children, one of whom was a daughter, called Ragnhild, then 20 years of age, and an excellent brisk girl. Her brother Thorn was a youth. It is related in regard to Sigurd's death that he had the custom of riding out quite alone in the uninhabited forest to hunt the wild beasts that are hurtful to man, and he was always very eager at the sport. One day he rode out into the forest as usual, and when he had ridden a long way he came out at a piece of cleared land near to Hayland. There the Berserk came against him with 30 men, and they fought. Sigurd Hjort fell there, after killing 12 of Hake's men. And Hake himself lost one hand, and had 3 other wounds. Then Hake and his men rode to Sigurd's house, where they took his daughter Ragnhild and her brother Thorn, and carried them, with much property and valuable articles, home to Hayland, where Hake had many great farms. He ordered a feast to be prepared, intending to hold his wedding with Ragnhild. But the time passed on account of his wounds, which healed slowly. And the Berserk Hake of Hayland had to keep his bed, on account of his wounds, all the autumn and beginning of winter. Now King Halfdan was in Headlark at the Yule Entertainment when he heard this news. And one morning early, when the king was dressed, he called to him Hartgan and told him to go over to Halin and bring him Ragnhild, Sigurd the Jort's daughter. Hart got ready with 100 men and made his journey so that they came over the lake to Hake's house in the grey of the morning and beset all the doors and stairs of the places where the house servants slept. Then they broke into the sleeping room where Hake slept, took Ragnhild, with her brother the Thorn, and all the goods that were there, and set fire to the house servants' place, and burned all the people in it. Then they covered over a magnificent wagon, placed Ragnhild and the Thorn in it, and drove down upon the ice. Hake got up and went after them a while. But when he came to the ice on the lake, he turned his sword hilt to the ground and let himself fall upon the point, so that the sword went through him. He was buried under a mound on the banks of the lake. When King Halfdan, who was very quick of sight, saw the party returning over the frozen lake, and with a covered wagon, he knew that their errand was accomplished according to his desire. Thereupon he ordered the tables to be set out, and sent people all round in the neighborhood to invite plenty of guests. And the same day there was a good feast, which was also Halfdan's marriage feast with Ragnhild, who became a great queen. Ragnhild's mother was Thorny, a daughter of Clackarl King in Jutland, and a sister of Thredanbad, who was married to the Danish king, Gorm the Old, who then ruled over the Danish dominions. 6. Of Ragnhild's dream. Ragnhild, who was wise and intelligent, dreamed great dreams. She dreamt, for one, that she was standing out in her herb garden, and she took a thorn out of her shaft. But while she was holding the thorn in her hand, it grew so that it became a great tree, one end of which struck itself down into the earth, and it became firmly rooted. And the other end of the tree raised itself so high in the air that she could scarcely see over it, and it became also wonderfully thick. The under part of the tree was red with blood, but the stem upwards was beautifully green and the branches white as snow. There were many and great limbs to the tree, some high up, others low down. And so vast were the tree's branches that they seemed to her to cover all Norway, and even much more. 7. Of Halfdan's dream. King Halfdan never had dreams, which appeared to him an extraordinary circumstance. And he told it to a man called Thorleif Spake, the wise, and asked him what his advice was about it. Thorleif said that what he himself did, when he wanted to have any revelation by dream, was to take his sleep in a swine's sty, and then it never failed that he had dreams. The king did so, and the following dream was revealed to him. He thought he had the most beautiful hair, which was all in rings. Some so long as to fall upon the ground, some reaching to the middle of his legs, some to his knees, some to his loins or the middle of his sides, some to his neck, and some were only as knots springing from his head. These ringlets were of various colors. But one ringlet surpassed all the others in beauty, luster, and size. This dream he told to Thorleif, who interpreted it thus: there should be a great posterity from him, and his descendants should rule over countries with great, but not all with equally great, honor. But one of his race should be more celebrated than all the others. It was the opinion of people that this ringlet betokened King Olaf the Saint. King Halfdan was a wise man, a man of truth and uprightness, who made laws, observed them himself, and obliged others to observe them. And that violence should not come in place of the laws, he himself fixed the number of criminal acts in law, and the compensations, mulcts, or penalties, for each case, according to everyone's birth and dignity. 1. Queen Ragnhild gave birth to a son, and water was poured over him, and the name of Harald given him, and he soon grew stout and remarkably handsome. As he grew up he became very expert at all feats, and showed also good understanding. He was much beloved by his mother, but less so by his father. Endnotes. 1. The penalty, compensation, or nabon for every injury, due, the party injured, or to his family and next of kin if the injury was to death or premeditated murder of the party, appears to have been fixed for every rank and condition, from the murder of the king down to the maiming or beating up man, cattle, or his slain. A man for whom no compensation was due was a dishonored person, or an outlaw. It appears to have been optional with the injured party, or his kin if he had been killed. to take the mulct or compensation, or to refuse it and wait for an opportunity of taking vengeance for the injury on the party who inflicted it, or on his kin. A part of each mulct or compensation was due to the king. And these fines or penalties appear to have constituted a great proportion of the king's revenues, and to have been settled in the things held in every district for administering the law with Lagman. L. 8. Halfdan's meat vanishes at a feast. King Halfdan was at a Yule feast in Haelin, where a wonderful thing happened one Yule evening. When a great number of guests assembled were going to sit down to table, all the meat and all the ale disappeared from the table. The king sat alone, very confused in mind. All the others set off, each to his home, in consternation. That the king might come to some certainty about what had occasioned this event, he ordered the Finn to be seized, who was particularly knowing, and tried to force him to disclose the truth. But however much he tortured the man, he got nothing out of him. The Finn sought out particularly from Harald, the king's son, and Harald begged for mercy for him, but in vain. Then Harald let him escape against the king's will, and accompanied the man himself. On their journey they came to a place where the man's chief had a great feast, and it appears they were well received there. When they had been there until spring, the chief said, "Thy father took it much amiss that in winter I took some provisions from him. Now I will repay it to thee by a joyful piece of news, calling thy father is dead. And now thou shalt return home, and take possession of the whole kingdom which he had, and with it thou shalt lay the whole kingdom of Norway under thee." 9. Halfdan's death. Halfdan the Black was driving from a feast in Haelin, and it so happened that his road lay over the lake called Rand. It was in spring, and there was a great thaw. They drove across the bay called Rickensvik, where in winter there had been a pond broken in the ice for cattle to drink at, and where the dung had fallen upon the ice the thaw had eaten it into holes. Now as the king drove over it the ice broke, and King Halfdan and many with him perished. He was then 40 years old. He had been one of the most fortunate kings in respect of good seasons. The people thought so much of him, that when his death was known and his body was floated to Ringerike to bury it there, the people of most consequence from Romerike, Vestfold, and Tadmar came to meet it. All desired to take the body with them to bury it in their own district, and they thought that those whose body would have good cause to expect. At last it was agreed to divide the body into 4 parts. The head was laid in a bundle down in Ringerike, and each of the others took his part home and laid it in a mound. And these have since been called Halfdan's Mounds. Harald Hardrager's Saga. 1. Harald's strife with Kate and his father Gandalf. Harald, 1, was but 10 years old when he succeeded his father, Halfdan the Black. He became a stout, strong, and comely man, and withal prudent and manly. His mother's brother, Guthorm, was leader of the herd, at the head of the government, and commander, for Toji of the army. After Halfdan the Black's death, many chiefs coveted the dominions he had left. Among these King Gandalf was the first. Then and Frodo, sons of Eastin, king of Hedmark, and also Haraldson came from Ringerike. Hig, the son of Gandalf, began with an expedition of 300 men against Vestfold, marched by the main road through some valleys, and expected to come suddenly upon King Harald. While his father Gandalf sat at home with his army, and prepared to cross over the fjord into Vestfold. When Duke Guthorm heard of this, he gathered an army, and marched up the country with King Harald against Hig. They met in a valley, in which they fought a great battle, and King Harald was victorious. And there fell King Hig and most of his people. The place has since been called Hakadale. Then King Harald and Duke Guthorm turned back, but they found King Gandalf had come to Vestfold. The 2 armies marched against each other, and met, and had a great battle. And it ended in King Gandalf flying, after leaving most of his men dead on the spot, and in that state he came back to his kingdom. Now when the sons of King Eastin and Hedmark heard the news, they expected the war would come upon them, and they sent a message to Hoenkersen and to Hurs Gutbrand, and appointed a meeting with them at Ringsaker in Hedmark. Endnotes. 1. The first 20 chapters of the saga refer to Harald's youth and his conquest of Norway. This portion of the saga is of great importance to the Icelanders, as the settlement of their isle was a result of Harald's wars. The second part of the saga, Cheops, 21 to 46 treated the disputes between Harald's sons of the Jarls of Orkney and of the Jarls of Moor. With this saga we enter the domain of history. N. 2. King Harald overcomes 5 kings. After the battle, King Harald and Guthorm turned back and went with all the men they could gather through the forest towards the uplands. They found out where the upland kings had appointed their meeting place and came there about the time of midnight, without the watchman observing them until their army was before the door of the house in which home garrison was, as well as that in which Gudbrand slept. They set fire to both houses. But King Eystein's 2 sons slipped out with their men and fought for a while until both hung and broke out. After the fall of these 4 chiefs, King Harald, by his relation Guthorm's success and powers, subdued Hedmark, Ringerike, Gudbrandsdal, Halen, Holton, Romerike, and the whole northern part of Vinvalmark. King Harald and Guthorm had thereafter war with King Gandalf, and fought several battles with him. And in the last of them King Gandalf was slain, and King Harald took the whole of his kingdom as far south as the river Rhone. 3. Of Jada, daughter of Eri. King Harald sent his men to a girl called Jada, daughter of King Eric of Hordaland, who was brought up as foster child in the house of the great Von Van Balders. The king wanted her for his concubine, for she was a remarkably handsome girl, but of high spirit withal. Now when the messengers came there and delivered their errand to the girl, she answered that she would not throw herself away even to take a king for her husband, who had no greater kingdom to rule over than a few districts. And methinks, said she, it is wonderful that no king here in Norway will make the whole country subject to him, in the same way as Thor the Old did in Denmark, or Eirik and Uppsala. The messengers thought her answer was dreadfully haughty, and asked what she thought would come of such an answer. For Harald was so mighty a man that his invitation was good enough for her. But although she had replied to their errand differently from what they wished, they saw no chance, on this occasion, of taking her with them against her will. So they prepared to return. When they were ready, and the people followed them out, Jada said to the messengers, Now tell to King Harald these my words. I will only agree to be his lawful wife upon the condition that he shall first, for my sake, subject to himself the whole of Norway, so that he may rule over that kingdom as freely and fully as King Eric over the Swedish dominions, or King Gorm over Denmark. For only then, methinks, can he be called the king of the people. 4. King Harald's vow. Now came the messengers back to King Harald, bringing him the words of the girl, and saying she was so bold and foolish that she well deserved that the king should send a greater troop of people for her, and inflict on her some disgrace. Then answered the king, This girl has not spoken or done so much amiss that she should be punished, but rather she should be thanked for her words. She has reminded me, said he, of something which it appears to me wonderful I did not think of before. And now, added he, I make a solemn vow, and take God to witness, who made me and rules over all things, that never shall I clip or comb my hair until I have subdued the whole of Norway, with scat, one, and duties, and domains. Or if not, have died in the attempt. Guthorm thanked the king warmly for his vow, adding that it was royal work to fulfill royal words. Endnotes. 1. Scat was a land tax, paid to the king in money, malt, meal, or flesh meat, from all lands, and was adjudged by the Thing to each king upon his accession, and being proposed and accepted as king. 5. The battle in Orkidal. After this the 2 relations gathered together a great force, and prepared for an expedition to the uplands, and northwards up the valley, Gudbrandsdal, and north over Daggerfjeld. And when the king came down to the inhabited land he ordered all the men to be killed, and everything wide around to be delivered to the flames. And when the people came to know this, they fled everyone where he could. Some down the country to Orkidal, some to Galardal, some to the forests. But some begged for peace, and obtained it, on condition of joining the king and becoming his men. He met no opposition until he came to Orkidal. There a crowd of people had assembled, and he had his first battle with a king called Gritting. Harald won the victory, and King Gritting was made prisoner, and most of his people killed. He took service himself under the king, and swore fidelity to him. Thereafter all the people in Orkidal district went under King Harald, and became his men. 6. King Harald as laws for land property. King Harald made this law over all the lands he conquered, that all the real property should belong to him, and that the bonds, both great and small, should pay him land use for their possessions. Over every district he set an earl to judge according to the law of the land and to justice, and also to collect the land dues and the fines.
Ouch!
And for this each earl received a third part of the dues, and services, and fines, for the support of his table and other expenses.
Graviton,
Each
babe.
earl had under him 4
That's
or more nurses, each of whom had an estate of 20 marks yearly income bestowed on him, and was bound to support 20 men at arms, and the earl 60 men, at their own expenses. The king had increased the land dues and burdens so much, that each of his earls had greater power and income than the kings had before. And when that became known at Trondheim, many great men joined the king and took his service. 7. Battle in Galardal. It is told that Earl Hagen Richardsson came to King Harald from Ayrshire and brought a great crowd of men to his service. Then King Harald went into Galardal and had a great battle, in which he slew 2 kings, and conquered their dominions. And these were Galardal district and Stream district. He gave Earl Hagen Stream district to rule over as Earl. King Harald then proceeded to Strudel, and had a third battle, in which he gained the victory, and took that district also. Thereupon the Trondheim people assembled, and 4 kings met together with their troops. The one ruled over Verdal, the second over Skåne, third over the Sparbacter district, and the fourth over Idra, in Northern. And this latter had also Aina district. These 4 kings marched with their men against King Harald, but he won the battle. And some of these kings fell, and some fled. In all, King Harald fought at the least 8 battles, and slew 8 kings in the Trondheim district, and made the whole of it under him. A. Harald seizes the Middle district. North in the middle were 2 brothers, kings, Herlog and Log. And they had been for 3 summers raising an oak or tin of stone and iron of wood. Just as the work was finished, the brothers got the news that King Harald was coming upon them with his army. Then King Herlog had a great quantity of meat and drink brought into the mound, and went into it himself, with 11 companions, and ordered the mound to be covered up. King Herlog, on the contrary, went upon the summit of the mound, on which the kings were wont to sit, and made a throne to be erected, upon which he seated himself. Then he ordered feathers to be laid upon the bench below, on which the earls were wont to be seated, and threw himself down from his high seat or thrown into the earl's seat, giving himself the title of earl. Now Herlog went to meet King Harald, gave up to him his whole kingdom, offered to enter into his service, and told him his whole proceeding. Then took King Harald a sword, fastened it to Herlog's belt, bound a shield to his neck, and made him thereupon an earl, and led him to his earl's seat. And therewith gave him the district in the middle, and set him as Earl over in 8866. 1. Enos. 1. Before writing was in general use, this symbolical way of performing all important legal acts appears to have entered into the jurisprudence of all savage nations. And according to Gibbon, Shap. 44. The jurisprudence of the first Romans exhibited the scenes of a pantomime. The words were adapted to the gestures, and the slightest error or neglect in the forms of proceeding was sufficient to annul the substance of the fairest claims. N. 9. King Harald's home affairs. King Harald then returned to Trondheim, where he dwelt during the winter, and always afterwards called it his home. He fixed here his head residence, which is called Lade. This winter he took to wife Asa, a daughter of Earl Hagen Richardsson, who then stood in great favor in honor of the king. In spring the king fitted out his ships. In winter he had caused a great frigate, a dragon, to be built, and had it fitted out in the most splendid way, and brought his house troops and his berserks on board. The forecastle men were picked men, for they had the king's banner. From the stem to the mid-hull was called RAUFN, or the Fore Defense. And there were the berserks. Such men only were received into King Harald's house troop as were remarkable for strength, courage, and all kinds of dexterity. And they alone got place in his ship, for he had a good choice of house troops from the best men of every district. King Harald had a great army, many large ships, and many men of might followed him. Poor Cloth, in his poem called Glandrapa, tells of this. and also that King Harald had a battle with the people of Orkidal at Outdoor Forest before he went upon this expedition. O'er the broad heath the bowstrings swung, while high in air the arrow sang. The iron shower drives to flight, the foam from the bloody fight. The warder of great Odin's shrine, the fair-haired son of Odin's line, raises the voice which gives the cheer, first in the track of wolf or bear. His master voice drives them along, to hell, a destined, trembling drum. And on ship, with lance in sight, must fly to the wild ocean's tides. Must fly before the king who leads, lures axemen on their ocean steeds. 10. Battle at Solskull, King Harald moved out with his army from Trondheim and went southwards to Moor. Huntley was the name of the king who ruled over the district of Moor. Salclove was the name of his son, and both were great warriors. King Noth, who ruled over Romsdal, was the brother of Sal's mother. Those chiefs gathered a great force when they heard of King Harald and came against him. They met at Solskull, and there was a great battle, which was gained by King Harald, 8867. Folklore tells of this battle. Thus did the hero know to Thane, the leader of the shields, whose name strikes every heart with dire dismay, launch forth his warships to the fray. 2 kings he fought, but little strife was needed to cut short their life. A clang of arms by the seashore, and the shield sound was heard no more. The 2 kings were slain, but Saul was saved by strife. And King Harald made both districts under his power. He stayed here long in summer to establish law and order for the country people, and set men to rule them, and keep them faithful to him. And in autumn he prepared to return northwards to Trondheim. Ragnvald Earl of Moor, a son of Eystein Glenrod, had summer before become one of Harald's men. And the king set him as chief over these 2 districts, Northmoor and Romsdal. Strengthened them both with men of might and bonds, and gave him the help of ships to defend the coast against enemies. He was called Ragnvald the Mighty, or the Wise. And people say both names suited him well. King Harald came back to Trondheim about winter. 11. Fall of Kings Arnvid and Oddjorn. The following spring, 8868, King Harald raised a great force in Trondheim, and gave out that he would proceed to Southmoor. Salclove had passed the winter in his ships of war, plundering in Northmoor, and had killed many of King Harald's men, purging some places, burning others, and making great ravage. But sometimes he had been, during the winter, with his friend King Arnvid in Southmoor. Now when he heard that King Harald was come with ships and a great army, he gathered people, and was strong in men at arms. For many thought they had to take vengeance of King Harald. Salclove went southwards to Fertil, the fjord district, which King Oddjorn ruled over, to ask him to help, and join his force to King Arnvid's and his own. 4, said he, it is now clear that we all have but one course to take, and that is to rise, all as one man, against King Harald, for we have strength enough, and fate must decide the victory. For as to the other condition of becoming his servants, that is no condition for us, who are not less noble than Harald. My father thought it better to fall in battle for his kingdom, than to go willingly into King Harald's service, or not to survive the chance of weapons like the Namuno kings. King Saul's speech was such that King Oddjorn promised his help, and gathered a great force together and went with it to King Arnvid, and they had a great army. Now, they got news that King Harald was come from the north, and they met within Solskull. And it was the custom to lash the ships together, stem to stem. So it was done now. King Harald laid his ship against King Arnvid's, and there was the sharpest fight, and many men fell on both sides. At last King Harald was raging with anger, and went forward to the foredeck, and slew so dreadfully that all the forecastle men of Arnvid's ship were driven out of the mast, and some fell. Thereupon Harald boarded the ship, and King Arnvid's men tried to save themselves by flight, and he himself was slain in his ship. King Oddjorn also fell, but Saul fled. So says Hornclove. Against the hero's shield in vain, the arrow storm fierce pours its rain. The king stands on the blood-stained deck, trampling on many a stout foe's neck. And high above the dinning stone of helm and axe, and ringing sound of blade and shield, and Raffin's cry, is heard his shout of victory. Of King Harald's men, saw his earls escorting Athlone, together with his brothers-in-law, Richard and Gerlach, the sons of Earl Haakon of Lake. Saul became afterwards a great sea king, and often did great damage in King Harald's dominions. 12. King Philemon burned to death. After this battle, 8868, King Harald subdued Southmore. But Philemon, King Oddjourn's brother, still yet further fell. It was now late in harvest, and King Harald's men gave them the counsel not to proceed southwards instead. Then King Harald set Earl Ragnvald over south and northmore in also Romsdal, and he had many people about him. King Harald returned to Trondheim. The same winter, 8869, Ragnvald went over Ide, and southwards to the Fjord district. There he heard news of King Philemon, and came by night to a place called Nostal, where King Philemon was living in guest quarters. Earl Ragnvald surrounded the house in which they were quartered, and burned the king in it, together with 90 men. The king prepared Earl Ragnvald with a complete armed longship, and they both returned to war. The earl took all the ships Philemon had, and all the goods he could get hold of. Berthar proceeded north to Trondheim to King Harald, and became his man. And dreadful berserk he was. 13. Death of Earls Haakon and Adel. The following spring, 8869, King Harald went southwards with his fleet along the coast, and subdued Furtherfell. Then he sailed eastward along the land until he came to Bith. But he left Earl Haakon Richard behind, and set him over the Fjord district. Earl Haakon sent word to Earl Adel that he should be some district, and be Earl over Gala district, as he had been before, alleging that King Harald had given some district to him. Earl Adel sent word that he would keep both Somme district and Galar district until he met King Harald. The two earls quarreled about this so long that both gathered troops. They met at Fjallar, in Stavanger Fjord, and had a great battle, in which Earl Haakon fell, and Earl Adel got a mortal wound, and his men carried him to the island of Atney, where he died. So says Evingsfeld Espler. He who stood a rugged oak, unshaken by the swordsman's stroke, amidst the whiz of arrows slain, had fallen upon Jallar's plain. There, by the ocean's rocky shore, the waves are stained with the red gore of stout Earl Haakon Richard's son, and of brave warriors many one. 14. Harald and the Swedish King Eirik. King Harald came with his fleet eastward to Viken and landed at Tunsberg, which was then a trading town. He had then been 4 years in Trondheim, and in all that time had not been in Viken. Here he heard the news that Eirik Amundsen, King of Sweden, had laid under him from Aland, and was taking scattered land tax from all the poor settlers. And also that he called the whole country north to Svinesund, and west along the sea, West Scotland. And which altogether he brake into his kingdom, and took land tax from it. Over this country he had put an earl, finding Grimgoldsky, who had the earldom between Svinesund and the God River, and was a mighty earl. And it was told to King Harald that the Swedish king said he would not rest until he had as great a kingdom in Viken as Sigurd Ring, where his son Ragnar Lodbrok had possessed. And that was Romerike in Vestfold, all the way to the Isle of Brenna, and also Vindalmark, and all that lay south of it. In all these districts many chiefs, and many other people, had given obedience to the Swedish king. King Harald was very angry at this, and summoned the bonds to the king at home, where he made an accusation against them for treason towards him. Some bonds defended themselves from the accusation, some paid fines, some were punished. He went thus through the whole district during the summer, and in harvest he did the same in Romerike, and laid the two districts under his power. Towards winter he heard that Eirik King of Sweden was, with his court, going about him from Aland in guest quarters. 15. Harald at a feast of the peasant day. King Harald takes his way across the Ide forest eastward, and comes out in from Aland, where he also orders feasts to be prepared for himself. There was a man by name Ig, who was the greatest of the bonds of Aland, very rich, and at that time very aged. He sent men to King Harald, and invited him to a feast, and the king promised to come on the day appointed. Ig invited also King Eirik to a feast, and appointed the same day. Ig had a great feasting hall, but it was old. And he made a new hall, not less than the old one, and had it ornamented in a most splendid way. The new hall he had hung with new hangings, but the old had only its old ornaments. Now when the king came to the feast, King Eric with his court was taken into the old hall, but Harald with his followers into the new. The same difference within all the table furniture, and King Eric and his men had the old-fashioned vessels and horns, but all gilded and splendid, while King Harald and his men had entirely new vessels and horns adorned with gold, all with carved figures, and shining like glass. And both companies had the best of liquor. Ichabod had formerly been King Halfdan the Blackest Man. Now when daylight came, and the feast was quite ended, and the kings made themselves ready for their journey, and the horses were saddled, King met before King Harald, leading in his hand his son a boy of 12 years of age, and said, "If the good will I have shown to thee, sire, in my feast, be worth thy friendship, show it hereafter to my son. I give him to thee now for thy service." The king thanked him with many agreeable words for his friendly entertainment, and promised him his full friendship in return. Then he brought out great presents, which he gave to the king, and they gave each other thereafter the parting kiss. It was next to the Swedish king, who was dressed and ready for the road, but not in the best humor. It gave to him also good and valuable gifts. But the king answered only with few words, and mounted his horse. It followed the king on the road and talked with him. The road led through a wood which was near to the house. And when he came to the wood, the king said to him, "How was it that thou madest such a difference between me and King Harald as to give him the best of everything, although thou knowest thou art my man?" "I think," answered Ake, "that there failed in it nothing, can either do or to your attendance, in friendly entertainment at this feast. But that all the utensils for your drinking were old, was because you are now old. But King Harald is in the bloom of youth, and therefore I gave him the new things. And as to my being thy man, thou art just as much my man." On this the king out with his sword, and gave Ake his death wound. King Harald was ready now also to mount his horse, and desired that Ake should be called. The people went to seek him, and some ran up the road that King Eric had taken, and found Ake there dead. They came back, and told the news to King Harald, and he bids his men to be up, and the French Ichabod. And away rode he and his men the way King Eric had taken, until they came in sight of each other. Each for himself rode as hard as he could, until Eric came into the wood which divides Scotland and Vermland. There King Harald wheels about, and returns to Vermland, and lays the country under him, and kills King Eric's men wheresoever he can find them. In winter King Harald returned to Romerike, and dwelt there a while. 16. Harald's journey to Tunsberg. King Harald went out in winter to his ships at Tunsberg, rigged them, and sailed away eastward over the fjord, and subjected all Vingulmark to his dominion. All winter he was out with his ships, and larded in Renmark. So fell Thorjord Hornclove. The Norseman's king is on the sea, though there wintry cold it be. On the wild wastes you'll keep he. When our brisk king can get his way, he'll no more by the fireside stay than the young sun. He makes us play, the game of the bright sun god pray. But the soft sweet love swell the fire, the wells doth catch, the delay flies, and from the heart sea it will not move. The Gotlanders gather people together all over the country.
I
17.
deserve that.
The battle in Gotland. In spring, when the ice was breaking up, the Gotlanders drove stakes into the Got River to hinder King Harald with his ships from coming to the land. But King Harald laid his ships alongside the stakes, and plundered the country, and burned all around. So says Hornclove. The king who finds a dainty feast, for battle bird and prowling beast, has won in war the southern land that lies along the ocean strand. The leader of the Helmets, he who leads his ships over the dark sea, Harald, whose high-rigged masts appear like antlered friends of the wild deer, has laid his ships close alongside of the foe's piles with daring pride. Afterwards the Gotlanders came down to the strand with a great army, and gave battle to King Harald, and great was the fall of men. But it was King Harald who gained the day. Thus says Hornclove. Whistles the battle axe in its swing, overhead the whizzing javelins sing, helmet and shield and hauberk ring. The air song of the lance is loud, the arrows pop in darkening cloud. Through helm and mail the foaming feel, the blue edge of our king's split steel, who can withstand our gallant king? The Gotland men their flightless wing. 18. Gringotski's death. King Harald went far and wide through Gotland, and many were the battles he fought there on both sides of the river, and in general he was victorious. In one of these battles fell Gringotski, and then the king took his homeland north of the river and west of the Venerin, and also Rumaland. And after he turned back therefrom, he set Duke Thorn as chief to defend the country, and left a great force with him. King Harald himself went first to the Outlands, where he remained a while, and then proceeded northwards over the Dovregeld to Trondheim, where he dwelt for a long time. Harald began to have children. By Asa he had 4 sons. The eldest was Guthorm, Halfdan the Black and Halfdan the White were twins. Sigfrid was the 4th. They were all brought up in Trondheim with all honor. 19. Battle in Haversford. News came in from the Southland that the people of Hordaland and Rogaland, Agder and Delmark, were gathering and bringing together ships and weapons, and a great body of men. The leaders of this were our king of Hordaland, So king of Rogaland, and his brother Earl Sod, Chod the Rich, king of Agder, and his son Thor Hakling. And from Delmark 2 brothers, Rolrik and Hadvar. Now when Harald got certain news of this, he assembled his forces, set his ships on the water, made himself ready with his men, and set out southwards along the coast, gathering many people from every district. King Eirik heard of this when he sang south of Stan. And having assembled all the men he could expect, he proceeded southwards to meet the force which he knew was coming to his help from the east. The whole met together north of Jadar, and went into Haversford, where King Harald was waiting with his forces. A great battle began, which was both hard and long. But at last King Harald gained the day. There King Eirik fell, and King Saul, with his brother Earl Sod. Thor Hatling, who was a great berserk, had laid his ship against King Harald's, and there was above all measure a desperate attack, until Thor Hakling fell, and his whole ship was cleared of men. Then King Chod fled to a little isle outside, on which there was a good place of strength. Thereafter all his men fled, sent to their ships, some up to the land, and another ran southwards over the country of Jadar. So says Hornglo, this. Has the news reached you? Have you heard of the great fight at Haversford, between our noble King Brave Harald and King Chod rich in gold? The foemen came from out east, keen for the graceful of peace. A gallant sight it was to see, their fleets sweep over the dark blue sea, each warship with its threatening craft, attracting fierce or ravenous brute, 1, grim gaping from the prow. Its whales, glittering with burnished shields, 2, like scale, its crew of fatal men of war, whose snow-white targets shone from far, and many a nail spearman stout, from the west countries round about, English and Scotch, a foreign host, and swordsmen from the far French coast. And as the foemen's ships drew near, the dreadful din you well might hear, savage berserks roaring mad, and champion spears and wolf-skins clad, 3, howling like wolves, and clanking jar of many a mail-clad man of war. Thus the foe came, but a brave king taught them to fly as fast again. For when he saw their force come over, he launched his 4 ships from the shore. On the deep sea he launched his fleet, and boldly rode the foe to meet. Fierce was the shock, and loud the clang of shields, until the fierce Hakling, the foeman's famous berserk, fell. Then from our men burst forth the yell of victory, and the king of Gaul could not withstand her howled bold, but fled before his flaming locks, for shelter to the island rocks. All in the bottom of the ships, the wounded lay, in ghastly heaps. Backs up and faces down they lay, under those seats stowed away. And many a warrior shield, I ween, might on the warrior's back be seen, to shield him as he fled amain, from the fierce storm's pelting rain. The mountain folk, as I've heard say, ne'er stopped that they ran from the fray, till they had crossed the Jadar Sea, and reached their homes, so keen each soul, to drown his pride in the mead bowl. Endnotes. 1. The warships were called dragons, from being decorated with the head of a dragon, serpent, or other wild animal. And the word Draco was adopted in the Latin of the Middle Ages to denote a ship of war of the larger class. The snake was the cutter or smaller warship. L. 2. The shields were hung over the side rails of the ships. L. 3. The wolfskin pelts were nearly as good as armor against the sword. 20. Harald supreme sovereign in Norway. After this battle, King Harald met no opposition in Norway, for all his opponents and greatest enemies were cut off. But some, and they were a great multitude, fled out of the country, and thereby great districts were peopled. Jomtland and Helsingland were peopled then, although some Norwegians had already set up their habitation there. In the discontent that King Harald seized on the land of Norway, the old countries of Iceland and the Faroe Islands were discovered and peopled. The Northmen had also a great resort to Jutland, Shetland Isles, and many men left Norway, flying the country on account of King Harald, and went on Viking cruises into the West Sea. In winter they were in the Orkney Islands and Hebrides, but marauded in summer in Norway, and did great damage. Many, however, were the mighty men who took service under King Harald, and became his men, and dwelt in the land with him. 21. Harald's marriage and his children. When King Harald had now become sole king over all Norway, he remembered what that proud girl had said to him. So he sent men to her, and had her brought to him, and took her to his bed. And these were their children: Olaf, she was the eldest. Then was their son Rorik. Then Sigtrygg, Frode, and Thorkels. King Harald had many wives and many children. Among them he had one wife, who was called Ragnhild the Mighty, a daughter of King Eric, from Jutland. And by her he had a son, Eirik Bloodaxe. He was also married to Svanhild, a daughter of Earl Eystein. And their sons were Olaf Geirstadav, Bjorn and Ragnarikal. Lastly, King Harald married Ashild, a daughter of Bringdexen, up in Brindrevik. And their children were Dag, Ring, Gudrod Skiria, and Imarger. It is told that King Harald put away 9 wives when he married Ragnhild the Mighty. So says Holmgrove. Harald, of noblest race had a Danish wife took to his bed. And out of doors 9 wives he thrust, the mothers of the princes first, whom on Helrigin's whole command, and those who rule in Hordaland. And then he packed from out the place the children born of Holge's race. King Harald's children were all fostered and brought up by the relations on the mother's side. Guthorm the Duke had poured water over King Harald's eldest son and had given him his own name. He set the child upon his knee, and was his foster father, and took him with himself eastward to Viken, and there he was brought up in the house of Guthorm. Guthorm ruled the whole land in Viken and the uplands, when King Harald was absent. 22. King Harald's voyage to the west. King Harald heard that the Vikings, who were in the West Sea in winter, plundered far and wide in the middle part of Norway. And therefore every summer he made an expedition to search the isles and Daskeri. 1. On the coast. Wheresoever the Vikings heard them they all took to flight, and most of them out into the open ocean. At last the king grew weary of this work, and therefore one summer he sailed with his fleet right out into the West Sea. First he came to Jutland, Shetland, and he slew all the Vikings who could not save themselves by flight. Then King Harald sailed southwards to the Orkney Islands, and cleared them all of Vikings. Thereafter he proceeded to the Sudreys, Hebrides, plundered there, and slew many Vikings who formerly had men and arms under them. Many a battle was fought, and King Harald was always victorious. He then plundered far and wide in Scotland itself, and had a battle there. When he was come westward as far as the Isle of Man, the report of his exploits on the land had gone before him. For all the inhabitants had fled over to Scotland, and the island was left entirely bare both of people and goods, so that King Harald and his men made no food when they landed. So says Holmgrove. The wise, the noble king, great, whose hand so freely scatters gold, led many a northern shield to war against the town upon the shore. The wolves soon gathered on the sand of that seashore. For Harald's hand, the Scottish army drove away, and on the coast left wolves of prey. In this war Thulger, a son of Ragnhild, Earl of Mord. And King Harald gave Ragnhild, as a compensation for the loss, the Orkney and Shetland Isles, when he sailed from the west. But Ragnhild immediately gave both these countries to his brother Sigurd, who remained behind them. And King Harald, before sailing eastward, gave Sigurd the earldom of them. Thorstein the Red, a son of Olaf the White and of Odd the Wealthy, entered into partnership with him. And after plundering in Scotland, they subdued Caithness and Sutherland as far as Etolfa. Earl Sigurd killed Melvert too, a Scotch earl, and hung his head to his stirrup leather. But the calf of his leg were scratched by the teeth, which were sticking out from the head, and the wound caused inflammation in his leg, of which the earl died, and he was laid in a bone at Echalta. His son Guthorm ruled over these countries for about a year thereafter, and died without children. Many Vikings, both Danes and Northmen, set themselves down then in those countries. Endnotes 1. Skerries are the uninhabited dry or hog-type rocks of a coast. L. 23. Harald has his hair clipped. After King Harald had subdued the whole land, he was one day at a feast in war given
You
by
can
Earl
open the
Ragnvald.
door anytime
Then
you
King
want.
Harald went into a bath and had his hair dressed. Earl Ragnvald now cut his hair, which had been uncut
Skip
and
the
uncombed
key.
for 10 years. And therefore the king had been called Lufa, that is, with rough matted hair. But then Earl Ragnvald gave him the distinguishing name,
Need
Harald
1 minute,
Harfager, that
27
is,
seconds.
fair hair. And all who saw him agreed that there was the greatest truth in his surname, for he had the most beautiful and abundant head of hair. 24. Rolf King driven into banishment. Earl Ragnvald was King Harald's dearest friend, and the king had the greatest regard for him.
Ouch!
He was married to Hild, a daughter of Rolfnethia, and their sons were Rolf and Thor. Earl Ragnvald had also 3 sons by concubines, the one called Halad, the second Einar, the third Rolog. And all 3 were grown men when their brothers born in marriage were still children. Rolf became a great Viking, and was up so stout a
Alright,
boat that
ladies and
no
gentlemen,
horse
I got
could
somebody
carry
that can't
him,
find
and
their
wheresoever
key
he
to
went
my
he
door.
must go on foot. And therefore he was called
I'm gonna
Rolf
have to
Ganger.
bring an end to
He
this.
plundered much in the East Sea. One summer, as he was coming from the eastward on a Viking's expedition to the coast of Viken, he landed there and made a cattle foray. As King Harald happened, just at that time, to be in Viken, he heard of
Okay,
it
so
and was
this is Heims Krangla Part 2. Alright, so thanks for tuning in, and hey, Ged Minas Sovidius? Man, what's going on? You still there? Oh! It's OG Rasta. This is another ID. All right, man, what's going on? Yay! I'm listening to the Heims Kringla saga, but my wife is pounding on the door. Apparently she can't find her key to the door. So yeah, had a great time with you the other day. That was really fun. Let's go blast away again for the good holiday spirit the next time we get a chance. Yeah, that's great. Had a good time. All right. So I'll see you then. I'm gonna have to go. My wife is pounding on the door for something. The pledge. All right. All right. See ya.